What's going on, YouTube? Happy Friday. Early in the morning here. Tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow morning, depending on where you're living, we've got UFC Saudi Arabia. I think this card's kind of flying under the radar because we have some fire pay-per-views coming up after the Duplessis Strickland card. Not a bad main event, but the pay-per-view is a whole nother video. Anyways, here is your UFC Saudi Arabia main card breakdown. First fight off the rip, I feel like this dude doesn't get the respect he deserves. Mike Davis versus Fares Ziam. Fares? Whatever it may be. Killer fight, killer matchup on paper, but I honestly think that Mike Davis is too fast, too athletic, too explosive. I'm a big fan of his work. You know, obviously being a lightweight myself, that's somebody that I look at potentially fighting one day, so I watch his fights very, very closely. I think he is one of the best athletes in the lightweight division. He's not the most active fighter. I feel like he only fights once, maybe twice a year, but he's a killer all the same. He busts his ass. He's always in the gym. I see his videos on social media. With Fares Ziam, bad dude himself, super technical, slick striking. He's tall, he's long, but so is Mike Davis. I'm really interested to see how he's going to try and close that gap between their athleticism. Because technique alone, I think Mike Davis is better, but his athleticism is the key to victory in 90% of his fights. He's faster than guys. He's more explosive. His cardio is on point. I'm really interested to see how that gap's going to get closed. I personally don't think it will, so I'm going to have to go with Mike Davis for this fight. But that's going to be a banger of a fight, and I think if Mike Davis stays a little bit more active throughout the year, I think he's going to blow up into a much bigger star. Next up, we have Said Nurmagomedov, Vinicius Oliveira. I'm super excited for this fight. I feel like this is another low-key banger on the card. I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on Oliveira, obviously, when you're fighting Nurmagomedov. But, you know, most recent 5 fights, even 3-4 fights, Oliveira's record is a lot better. You know, he's on a 4 or 5 fight win streak. Nurmagomedov's on a 1 fight win streak with like 3 or 4 canceled bouts. His loss before that was to Jonathan Martinez. Not a big deal. Martinez is a bad dude himself. But I feel like Oliveira's kind of coming into his own. I feel like he's going to be able to neutralize the wrestling and be able to pick him apart on the feet. Oliveira's he's a wild man. You know what I mean? I'm super excited for that fight. My pick for that fight, I'm going to go with Vinicius Oliveira. Next up, we got a heavyweight banger that I don't really have a pick for. You know, heavyweights are coin flips at this point, this day and age in the UFC. Unless you're kind of an outlier like a Tom Aspinall who can kind of do a little bit of everything and has a little bit more athleticism. You know, most heavyweight fights end up being a coin flip. Anybody can knock each other out with any strike. Let's get into it. Sergei Pavlovich versus Zino Biggie Boy Rozenstruik. Say that 10 times fast. You know, Rozenstruik's coming off of a couple wins himself. A split decision over Tai Tuivasa. Beat Shamil Gaziev. These names are killing me today. Though Sergei is coming off 2 back-to-back losses going into this fight, he's still a bad dude himself. You know, he still has a killer record of 18-3. You know, he's not some bum or some journeyman that's been one win, 1 loss. You know, he was on a really good roll until these last 2 fights. And there's nothing wrong with losing to Alexander Volkov or Tom Aspinall. You know, Volkov been top of the heavyweight division for years now, you know, even with his ups and downs. And Tom Aspinall is the interim champ. At this point, pretty much the heavyweight champ, considering Jones won't fight him. Saying the facts. Don't come for me, people. I don't really have a pick for this fight. Like I said, it's a coin flip. I'm going to go with Rozenstruik just because he's coming off the win streak. But if either of them get slept or hurt really bad early, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, these last 2 fights I'm super excited for. The co-main event, Shara the Bullet Magomedov versus Michael MVP Page. This fight is so crazy. I feel like it's not being talked about or promoted enough. And I also feel like people are just assuming that Bullet is going to steamroll MVP. MVP has had a good showing in the UFC so far, wins and losses aside. You know, you take a guy like Ian Gary, who's outstriking everybody, obviously can grapple, obviously can wrestle a little bit, but he is trying to dominate everybody on the feet, and then he fights MVP, and he's a wrestler, he's a grappler. You know, I'm going to get on top of you and just lay there, no damage, you know, not really advancing position, just taking his control against the cage, getting him down when he can, and getting his control on the ground. But even then, MVP did a great job neutralizing takedowns. He eventually was getting up, defending submissions. His fight before that with Kevin Holland, same thing. Picking a guy like Kevin Holland apart when it seemed like he was on that night. You know, Kevin Holland's a guy that can show up and be a world champion, or he can show up and lose to nobody. But that night, he was in there, and he was fighting MVP, and he looked really good, and MVP just had his number. Hurt him early, hurt him often, and I'm really excited to see MVP kind of show up and show out. Being older, I believe he's 36, 37 maybe. He's definitely a lot older than everybody else in the welterweight division. Shara Bullet Magomedov, obviously being very young. Because Magomedov's never really been much of a wrestler, and because he says that he's going to strike with MVP, which is a lot easier said than done, I don't think that the age is really going to play that much of a difference. MVP still looks smooth. He still looks quick. You know, those are the things that kind of start to fade with age, and it just hasn't yet with him. Maybe this is the fight that it does. We just haven't seen it yet. But I do think, striking for striking, I think MVP does pick Magomedov apart. I don't think Magomedov's bad at striking by any means, but I feel like MVP's in and out blitzing movement and his awkward angles on his strikes will confuse Magomedov. Obviously, Magomedov himself throws some weird strikes, you know, double spinning back fist, things like that nature. But I do think the experience that MVP has, the tools that he has, and the height is going to be a huge difference in this fight. It's going to be a big factor. I'm going with MVP. Super excited for this fight either way. But I do kind of want to see MVP go on a run at the welterweight division. And I feel like he's getting slept on, and I feel like he doesn't get enough respect for his UFC run. Where guys like Michael Chandler, who have won 2 fights and lost 4 or 5, you know, are still hyped up and still getting co-main and main event spots. He's exciting to watch, but so is MVP. And MVP is a showman, and MVP can finish people. So I really hope that if MVP gets it done this weekend, I hope it's a flashy knockout that can add to his highlight reel. In the main event, Israel Adesanya for a non-title bout for the first time in 6 years. That's crazy. Versus Nassourdine Imavov. All of my friends said, who the hell is Imavov? I've been a fan of him since his UFC debut. I like his swagger. I like his technique. I like his flow, the way his striking all flows together. You know, he's a super entertaining fighter. He's a bad dude. He's super tough, super technical on the feet. He can obviously wrestle a little bit. It's never really his go-to, but you've seen him shoot some single legs, head outside singles, some doubles. But I'm really excited for this fight. I'm really excited what his game plan is going to be for Adesanya. And I'm even more interested, and I think most of the MMA community is interested in what Israel Adesanya shows up. You know, I saw Chris Curtis on a podcast recently, and I'm not Chris Curtis's biggest fan. I feel like he always has an excuse or something to complain about, win or lose. But I am interested, and his point was he doesn't like Israel Adesanya as a champion. He likes Izzy as a contender. He feels like when Izzy has the belt, he's fighting to protect. Izzy's a contender, he's fighting to attack and to take. I do kind of see that for sure. Before Izzy lost the belt, it kind of felt like John Jones before he went to heavyweight. He's kind of slowing down, kind of taking rounds off, you know, jabbing his way through these rounds instead of going out there to finish these fighters and to get out of there as soon as possible and put on impressive, flashy performances. You know, if you take that Israel Adesanya that fought Anderson Silva and the Israel Adesanya that was defending his title against, say, Yoel Romero, though Yoel is a freak and though it takes a different type of psychopath to fight Yoel Romero in the pocket or brawl with him, looking at you, Robert Whittaker, Izzy did not look the same. You go from standing in the pocket or standing right in the range of Anderson Silva, showboating with him, putting on like a poetic type of performance, you know, passing of the torch type of performance, to standing still for 25 minutes in front of Yoel Romero, getting rocked once, and then leg kicking and jabbing your way to a decision. I get what Chris Curtis is saying for sure, and I feel like everybody's put so much pressure on Izzy for this fight. You know, he said it himself. For the first time, he's kind of the old dog that everybody's coming for to take his spot, and he's got to show up and show out that he's still here and he's still a contender. I feel like a lot of people would break under that pressure, but I feel like these are the moments that contender Izzy shines. And being number 2, being right there next to a title shot, I think the only thing Izzy would have to worry about after this fight is a Khamzat. I very much see him winning this fight. I do see Khamzat fighting for the title next between Duplessis and Strickland, whoever wins that fight. And then I can see Izzy fighting Khamzat. I think Khamzat beats whoever that winner is. And then Izzy versus Khamzat. I don't like that fight for Izzy, but if he wants to become champion, he wants to become the best in the world. That is the path that I think he has to follow. And I think he needs to keep that contender mindset. He's the best. He's coming to take whatever he wants from these people. I think there's going to be a really exciting striking battle. I think even if Izzy is a little lackadaisical and does kind of sit back on his jab and his leg kicks, I feel like Imavov's going to push the pressure enough to where Izzy will be able to kind of get some shots off and stand and bang with him. What I am worried about, though, guys like Izzy, guys like Volkanovski, guys like Jared Cannonier, I saw somebody else saying this, they don't use their feet to get out of the way of danger. And not all the time. Like I said, contender Izzy coming up. You see him dipping his head, moving his feet, circling out on guys, showboating. But these guys that are coming off these recent losses where they're either getting knocked out or caught and then submitted, they're not moving their feet. They're moving their head. They take 1-2 steps, they counter, and then they're leaning back. Leaning back is great to a certain extent. If I overreach my overhand strikes or a head kick or whatever it may be, and you are at the limit of your lean, nowhere to go. You're eating that shot right off the temple or off the chin. Moving your feet and striking gets you out of the way. Think of a Canelo, you know, dip, dive, roll. Even when he leans, he can circle and pivot out the other way. So I'm really excited to see if Imavov picks up on that. And if he's looking to use his straight punches to get in, to throw some hooks to get him to lean on his back foot. If he can get Izzy leaning on his back foot, especially against the cage like he did against Cannonier, I could see him catching Izzy. I'm interested to see. I don't think Izzy's chin is gone, but Du Plessis catching him with that weird overhand that kind of rocked him and sent him to the mat with that lazy takedown. Du Plessis just does that to people. But I would be interested to see if Izzy can take a shot like that from Imavov, especially if he's leaning on his back foot, not having his weight centered. It's going to be really interesting to see if Izzy's passing the torch down to Imavov and the rest of the division, or if he's here to stay and he's going to be fighting Hamza by the end of the year for the middleweight title. I think Izzy takes this fight 100%. I do think it's going to be a super exciting fight either way, but I feel like Izzy's fired up. I feel like everybody's expecting him to drop the ball. We're going to see the second coming of contender Izzy. Now, if that doesn't play out and Imavov does show up and show out, say he even finishes Izzy, wouldn't be insane either. Imavov is a bad dude. He's a phenomenal striker, great athlete. I'm excited for this fight. Official pick is Izzy, but I wouldn't be super sad either way. And that is your UFC Saudi Arabia fight preview. Make sure that you guys like the video, comment what else you guys want to see on the channel, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you guys. I will catch you the day after for our Fight Night recap. Peace.